Guo Wengui, the Chinese billionaire turned self-proclaimed whistleblower, cultivated an image of fighting for democracy. He railed against the Chinese Communist Party, attracting a devoted following who saw him as a champion against authoritarianism. His recent conviction for fraud, however, shattered this image, revealing a calculated scheme that defrauded his supporters of millions. This shocking turn of events has sent shockwaves through overseas democracy movements, forcing a critical examination of misplaced trust and the true meaning of fighting for democratic ideals. Guo's downfall underscores the fragility of movements built on personality cults rather than solid principles. His charisma and inflammatory rhetoric, while effective in galvanizing support, masked a deeper agenda driven by personal gain. This raises critical questions about the dangers of blindly following charismatic figures and the importance of scrutinizing the actions of those who claim to fight for freedom and democracy. The allure of a singular heroic figure is undeniable. It provides a focal point for anger and a sense of hope for change. Yet, history is littered with examples of charismatic leaders who betrayed the trust placed in them. Guo's case serves as a stark reminder that true democracy requires vigilance, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of skepticism, especially when promises of liberation are intertwined with personal enrichment.
Fighting for democracy is much harder than fighting against non-democracy.
Chinese legal scholar Gao Han eloquently articulated a fundamental truth about democracy. His words highlight a crucial distinction often overlooked in the fervor of opposing authoritarian regimes. True democracy necessitates more than simply tearing down existing structures. It demands the painstaking construction of a system rooted in accountability, transparency, and the rule of law. Opposition to a regime, while often necessary, can easily become an end in itself. It can unite individuals with vastly different visions for the future, bound only by a shared enemy. Once that enemy is gone, the fragility of such alliances becomes apparent. Without a shared commitment to building a just and equitable society, the seeds of discord are sown. Genuine democracy requires a willingness to hold all actors accountable, including those who claim to represent the movement itself. It demands a commitment to due process, even when it is inconvenient, and a rejection of hypocrisy in all its forms. Guo's exploitation of his followers' trust stands as a stark reminder that the fight for democracy must be waged with integrity and a steadfast commitment to its core principles, not just opposition to a common enemy. The arrest of Guo Wengui has exposed a critical fault line within some segments of the overseas Chinese democracy movement, the prioritization of anti-communism over a nuanced understanding and pursuit of democratic values. While opposition to the CCP's authoritarian rule is understandable, conflating it with the entirety of democratic ideals risks simplifying a complex issue and undermining the very principles these movements claim to champion. Genuine democracy encompasses a broad spectrum of values, including individual rights, freedom of expression, a fair and independent judiciary, and a government accountable to its people. Reducing this multifaceted concept to mere opposition to communism creates a dangerously narrow definition, one that can be easily manipulated for personal gain or to justify undemocratic actions. Moreover, this narrow focus can lead to alliances with individuals or groups whose values are antithetical to democracy. The allure of shared opposition can blind individuals to incompatible ideologies, resulting in partnerships that ultimately undermine the movement's long-term goals. The fight for democracy requires a clear-eyed assessment of potential allies and a commitment to principles over expediency. Section 4. Ironies sting when democracy movements abandon democracy. One of the most troubling aspects of Guo Wengui's rise and fall is the irony of his supporters' unwavering loyalty, despite his increasingly undemocratic behavior. This blind faith exposes a fundamental problem within some segments of the democracy movement, a failure to practice the very principles they advocate for. When dissent is stifled, information is controlled, and alternative viewpoints are silenced within these groups. It mirrors the very systems they claim to oppose. Democracy thrives on open debate, dissenting voices, and a willingness to challenge authority. It requires a culture of accountability where leaders are held responsible for their actions, and transparency is paramount. When these principles are absent, even in the pursuit of a seemingly noble goal, the movement itself becomes susceptible to corruption and abuse of power. The tendency to overlook red flags and excuse problematic behavior in the name of a greater good is a slippery slope. It creates an environment where individuals like Guo Wengui can thrive, exploiting the trust and hope of those yearning for change. The fight for democracy must begin within the movement itself, ensuring that the principles of transparency, accountability, and open discourse are not sacrificed in the pursuit of a distant ideal.
Section 5. Anti-Communism versus pro-democracy, a critical distinction. The Guo Wengui saga highlights a critical need for clarity within overseas democracy movements, the distinction between being anti-communist and genuinely pro-democracy. While these two concepts are often conflated, they are not synonymous. Opposition to communism, while understandable given the CCP's authoritarian rule, does not automatically translate into a commitment to democratic values or the hard work of building a democratic society. Being pro-democracy requires more than simply opposing an existing regime. It demands a deep understanding and embrace of democratic principles, a willingness to engage in respectful dialogue with those holding different views, and a commitment to building a society that respects the rights of all individuals. Confusing anti-communism with pro-democracy can lead to misguided alliances, a tolerance for undemocratic behavior, and ultimately, a betrayal of the movement's core values. The fight for democracy must be grounded in a clear understanding of what it truly means to be democratic, and a willingness to hold all actors accountable to those principles.
Section 6. The building blocks of democracy, more than just a label. The allure of the word democracy is undeniable. It conjures images of freedom, justice, and a government accountable to its people. However, simply labeling a movement or an individual as pro-democracy does not make it so. True democracy is not a destination, but an ongoing process, a set of principles and practices that require constant vigilance and a willingness to engage in the messy work of building a just and equitable society. Democracy requires a commitment to protecting individual rights. Freedom of speech, assembly, religion, and the press are fundamental to a functioning democracy. Ensuring free and fair elections, the right of citizens to choose their leaders without fear or coercion, is paramount. Upholding the rule of law, no one is above the law, and everyone is entitled to equal protection and due process. Promoting civic engagement, a healthy democracy requires active participation from its citizens in the political process. Embracing diversity of thought, disagreement, and debate are not threats to democracy, but essential components of a vibrant and evolving society. These principles, while seemingly simple, are complex and require constant nurturing. They demand a commitment from all members of society to uphold them, even when it is difficult or inconvenient. The fight for democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires active participation, critical thinking, and a willingness to hold ourselves and our leaders accountable to the highest standards of ethical and democratic behavior. Section 7. Guo's Shadow: Lessons and the Future of Democracy Movements. The arrest and conviction of Guo Wengui cast a long shadow over overseas democracy movements, forcing a period of introspection and a reckoning with uncomfortable truths. While his downfall is a significant setback, it also presents an opportunity for growth and renewal. By learning from the mistakes of the past, these movements can emerge stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to navigate the challenges ahead. Several key lessons emerge from the Guo Wengui saga. Beware of charismatic leaders. Blind faith in any individual is dangerous. Scrutinize the actions and motivations of those who claim to fight for freedom. Don't confuse anti-communism with pro-democracy. Embrace the full spectrum of democratic values and hold all actors accountable to those principles. Practice democracy within the movement. Foster open dialogue, dissent, and accountability within democracy groups. Focus on building, not just tearing down. Develop a clear vision for a democratic future and work collaboratively to achieve it. The future of democracy movements hinges on their ability to learn from this experience and emerge with a renewed commitment to the principles they espouse. By embracing transparency, accountability, and a genuine commitment to democratic values, these movements can honor the sacrifices of those who came before them and continue the fight for a more just and equitable world.